There is something deeply wrong with the yellow stick in your refrigerator. For the past 60 years, doctors have told you that butter will kill you. It clogs your arteries. It causes heart disease. It raises your cholesterol. The American Heart Association built an empire on this message. Margarine companies made billions, and an entire generation grew up believing that natural animal fat is poison, while laboratory-created spreads are health food. But here is what they did not tell you. In 1350, the average medieval peasant consumed between 2 and 4 ounces of butter every single day. That is half a stick to a full stick of pure animal fat. They spread it on their bread. They cooked with it. They ate it straight when food was scarce. These were people working 12-hour days in the fields, hauling stones, building cathedrals that still stand today, and they did not die of heart attacks. There was no cardiovascular disease epidemic, no stroke crisis, no cholesterol panic. The first recorded heart attack in medical literature was not until 1912. Before that, heart disease was so rare that when a physician encountered it, they wrote a case study because it was unusual. Yet medieval peasants ate butter daily for centuries. So what changed? The answer is not that butter became dangerous. The answer is that in 1953, a scientist named Ansel Keys published a graph, ignored the data that contradicted his hypothesis, and launched a nutritional disaster that is still killing people today. Your grandfather ate butter his whole life and lived to 90. You eat margarine and need statins at 50. This is not an accident. This is the result of corrupted science, corporate profit, and a medical establishment that refuses to admit it was catastrophically wrong. Before we go deeper, drop a comment and tell us, do you still avoid butter because of what your doctor told you? Or have you gone back to eating it? Let us know below, because what you are about to discover will make you question everything you have been taught about fat, cholesterol, and heart disease. Butter was survival walk into a medieval peasant's home, and you would see butter everywhere, not hidden in the back of a cold box, not measured out in careful tablespoons, but used liberally, daily, without shame or fear. In Northern Europe, especially in England, Ireland, and Scandinavia, butter was a staple food as essential as bread. Families churned butter weekly from the cream of their cows. A single cow could produce enough milk to make 2 to 3 pounds of butter per week, and every ounce was consumed. Medieval account books from monasteries and noble estates show the quantities. In 1398, the household of the Earl of Warwick recorded purchasing over 400 pounds of butter per month for a household of roughly 80 people. That is 5 pounds per person per month, or nearly 3 ounces per day. And these were not people sitting at desks. They were working physically demanding jobs that burned thousands of calories daily. But it was not just the wealthy. Peasant families relied on butter even more heavily. During Lent, when the Catholic Church banned meat and animal products, the wealthy could pay for a butter indulgence, literally a church tax that allowed them to keep eating butter. The poor could not afford the indulgence, so they ate fish, beans, and dark bread for 40 days. And historians note that peasant health visibly declined during Lent. They became weaker, more susceptible to illness. When Easter came and butter returned to the diet, health improved. The pattern was consistent across centuries. Butter equaled vitality. Removing butter equaled decline. The butter they ate was not like your modern supermarket butter. It was raw, unpasteurized, and came from cows that grazed on pasture. These cows ate grass, wildflowers, and herbs. Their milk was rich in fat, soluble vitamins, particularly vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin K2. When churned into butter, these vitamins concentrated even further. A single tablespoon of medieval pasture butter contained more vitamin A than most modern multivitamins. Vitamin K2, which is nearly absent from the modern diet, was abundant. This vitamin is critical for calcium metabolism. It directs calcium into your bones and teeth and away from your arteries. Without K2, calcium deposits in soft tissues, contributing to arterial plaque. Medieval peasants eating butter daily were protecting their cardiovascular system, not harming it. Then there was the fat composition. Grass-fed butter is rich in conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA, a fatty acid with powerful anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer properties. It also contains butyric acid, a short-chain fatty acid that feeds the cells lining your colon and reduces gut inflammation. Medieval butter was a functional food. It was not empty calories, it was dense, nutrition that supported immune function, bone health, and metabolic stability. Compare that to what you eat today. Modern butter comes from cows fed grain, soy, and corn. These cows never see pasture. Their milk is pasteurized at high temperatures, destroying enzymes and heat-sensitive vitamins. The butter is often made from cream that has been separated, stored, and processed weeks after milking. By the time it reaches your table, it is nutritionally inferior to what a medieval peasant ate. And that is, if you are even eating butter. Most people switched to margarine or seed oil spreads, products that did not exist until the 20th century. How we were lied to. The war on butter began in 1953. Ansel Keys, a physiologist at the University of Minnesota, presented a paper at a World Health Organization conference. He showed a graph correlating dietary fat intake with heart disease rates across 6 countries. The correlation was striking. The more fat people ate, the more heart heart disease they had. Keyes concluded that dietary fat, especially saturated fat from animal sources, caused heart disease. This became known as the diet heart hypothesis, and it changed the world. But here is what Keyes did not show. He had data from 22 countries, not 6. When all 22 were included, the correlation disappeared. Countries with high fat intake and low heart disease existed. Countries with low fat intake and high heart disease existed. The data was all over the place. Keyes cherry-picked the 6 countries that supported his hypothesis and ignored the rest. This is scientific fraud, but it worked. The graph was compelling, the media loved it, and the American Heart Association, desperate for a simple message to combat rising heart disease rates, adopted Keyes's hypothesis as official policy. In 1977, the US government issued the first dietary guidelines for Americans. The guidelines told people to reduce total fat intake, especially saturated fat, and replace it with carbohydrates. Butter was out, margarine was in, whole milk was replaced with skim. Eggs were limited to 2 per week. An entire nation changed how it ate, based on one man's flawed study, but the science was never settled. In 1968, the sugar industry paid Harvard scientists to publish a review downplaying the role of sugar in heart disease and blaming fat instead. These payments were not disclosed until 2016, when researchers uncovered internal documents proving the corruption. The sugar industry knew that sugar, not fat, was driving heart disease and diabetes, so they paid scientists to shift the blame. Then there was the Framingham Heart Study, one of the longest-running cardiovascular studies in history. It began in 1948 and tracked thousands of participants for decades. The study found no correlation between dietary fat intake and heart disease. In fact, people who ate more saturated fat had slightly lower rates of heart disease. But this finding was buried. It did not fit the narrative. The public was never told. By the 1980s, the low-fat dogma was unshakable. Food companies reformulated thousands of products to be low-fat or fat-free. But when you remove fat from food, it tastes like cardboard. So they added sugar, massive amounts of sugar, low-fat yogurt, low-fat cookies, low-fat salad dressing, all loaded with sugar and high fructose corn syrup. The result was not better health. It was an obesity epidemic, a diabetes epidemic, and heart disease rates did not decline. They increased. Let's talk about what happens in your body when you eat butter, because the story you have been told is a lie. Saturated fat does not clog your arteries. That is not how biochemistry works. When you eat butter, it is broken down in your small intestine by bile acids and lipase enzymes. The fatty acids are absorbed into your bloodstream and transported to your liver. From there, they are either burned for energy or stored for later use. Saturated fats are one of the most stable, efficient fuel sources your body can use. Your liver also uses saturated fat to produce cholesterol, and here is where the misunderstanding begins. Cholesterol is not the enemy. Cholesterol is essential for life. It is the precursor to every sex hormone your body makes. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all made from cholesterol. It is the building block of cell membranes. It is required for brain function. Your brain is 60% fat, and much of that is cholesterol. It is also the precursor to vitamin D. When sunlight hits your skin, cholesterol is converted into vitamin D3. Your body makes about 2,000 milligrams of cholesterol every single day, regardless of how much you eat. When you eat more cholesterol or saturated fat, your liver produces less. When you eat less, your liver produces more. This is called homeostasis. Your body tightly regulates cholesterol levels because it is that important. But in the 1950s, scientists discovered that people with heart disease often had high cholesterol. They jumped to the conclusion that cholesterol caused heart disease. This is like saying firefighters cause fires because they are always present at fire scenes. Cholesterol is found at the site of arterial damage because it is part of the repair process. When your arteries are inflamed or damaged, your body sends cholesterol to patch the injury. The cholesterol is not the cause, it is the response. What actually causes arterial damage? Inflammation, oxidative stress, high blood sugar, chronic insulin resistance. All of these are driven by excess sugar and refined carbohydrates, not by butter. When you eat sugar, your blood glucose spikes. Your pancreas releases insulin to bring it back down. Over time, your cells become resistant to insulin. Your pancreas has to produce more and more to achieve the same effect. This chronic hyperinsulinemia damages the lining of your arteries. It causes inflammation, and inflammation is what drives plaque formation. Butter, especially grass-fed butter, is anti-inflammatory. It contains omega-3 fatty acids in smaller amounts than fish. It contains vitamin K2, which prevents calcium from depositing in arteries. It contains butyric acid, which reduces gut inflammation and supports a healthy microbiome. Medieval peasants eating butter were protecting themselves from the very disease modern doctors claim butter causes. When the government told people to stop eating butter, the food industry had a solution ready. Margarine. Margarine was invented in 1869 in France as a cheap butter substitute for the military. It was made from beef tallow and vegetable oils. By the early 20th century, manufacturers switched to hydrogenated vegetable oils. This process turns liquid oils into solid fats by forcing hydrogen gas through them at high temperatures. The result is trans fats, the most dangerous fats ever created. Trans fats do not exist in nature. Your body has no mechanism to process them. They get incorporated into cell membranes, making them rigid and dysfunctional. They raise LDL cholesterol, lower HDL cholesterol, and massively increase inflammation. Study after study linked trans fats to heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. By the 2000s, the evidence was overwhelming. In 2015, the FDA finally banned artificial trans fats. But for 50 years, margarine was marketed as heart healthy. Doctors recommended it. Hospitals served it. Millions of people switched from butter to margarine, believing they were protecting their hearts. They were not. They were poisoning themselves. But margarine was not the only replacement. Vegetable oils exploded in use. Soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, sunflower oil. These oils are extracted from seeds using high heat and chemical solvents like hexane. They are then refined, bleached, and deodorized to remove the rancid smell. The process destroys any beneficial compounds and leaves behind a highly unstable oil rich in omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 is essential in small amounts, but in excess, it is pro-inflammatory. The ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is around 4:1. Medieval peasants had a ratio close to 1:1. Modern Americans have a ratio of 20:1 or higher. This imbalance drives chronic inflammation, which is the root cause of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and autoimmune disease. Butter has a balanced fat profile. Margarine and seed oils do not. Yet for decades, we were told to avoid butter and embrace industrially processed fats. The result is visible. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. Diabetes affects 1 in 3 adults. Obesity rates have tripled since 1975, and it all correlates with the decline in butter consumption and the rise of seed oils and sugar. If you want to eat like a medieval peasant, start with real butter, not margarine, not butter-flavored spreads. Real butter from grass-fed cows. Look for butter labeled grass-fed or pasture-raised. The color should be deep yellow, almost orange, especially in summer when cows are eating fresh grass. Pale butter comes from grain-fed cows and lacks the nutrients you need. Use butter generously. Cook with it. Spread it on bread. Add it to vegetables. Medieval peasants consumed 2 to 4 ounces per day. You do not need to match that, but 1 to 2 tablespoons per day is reasonable and beneficial. Butter is satiating. It signals your body that you have eaten enough. When you eat butter, you eat less overall. When you eat seed oils and sugar, you stay hungry and overeat. If you are worried about cholesterol, understand that dietary cholesterol has minimal impact on blood cholesterol. A 2015 advisory from the Dietary Guidelines Committee removed the recommendation to limit cholesterol intake because the science showed it was unnecessary. Your doctor may not know this. Many doctors receive minimal nutritional education and rely on outdated guidelines. If you want to track your health, focus on inflammation markers, not just cholesterol. Ask your doctor to test C-reactive protein, or CRP, a marker of systemic inflammation. Ask for an A1C test, which measures average blood sugar over 3 months. These are far better predictors of heart disease risk than total cholesterol. And if your triglycerides are high, that is a sign of too much sugar and refined carbs, not too much butter. If you are learning something valuable here, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us share this forgotten knowledge with more people who are tired of being told that natural food is poison, while processed garbage is health food. The medieval peasant spreading thick butter on his dark bread was not ignorant. He was working with a food system that prioritized real nutrition over corporate profit. Butter was not a luxury. It was fuel. It was medicine. It was life. We traded that for margarine, seed oils, and a medical establishment that profits from keeping you sick. Heart disease is a modern epidemic, not a medieval one. The timeline does not lie. Butter consumption has declined. Seed oil consumption has skyrocketed, and so has heart disease. The secret was never lost. It was buried under fraudulent science and corporate greed. And every time you choose real butter over industrial spreads, you reclaim a piece of that ancient knowledge. Knowledge that kept people strong when life was hard. Knowledge that still works today. Subscribe, and let's keep digging up what they buried.